to make sure we are online, and then we're ready to go. We are live. That's great. Okay. We're ready to go. Let's get this set up. Okay. And first the chanting. All right. Shri Guru Jal Ranapatma Devala Pakatsi Sadma Batan Moe Savatana Mate Jakara Prasade Mai Evavatore Krishna Prapti Oi Aloy Te Guru Mukapa Mabakya Chichete Kore Akaya Aranakore Amanea Chorani Grati Esayutamakadi Yekrasade Puri Sarva Ata Rakudana Dilo Ye Janme Prabhu Say Divekyan Rede Prakasita Prema Bhakti Yote Avijavana Satyate Vede Gaya Rajarita Shukharuna Sindhu Adamajanara Bandhu Ganat Kera Jivana Evias Kusutri Muvana Evias Kusutri Muvana Rupat Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Paramahansa also tell us that Shimad is divine grace. Abhaya Chatanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Machuranam Ki Jai. Chakarata Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasa Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Go. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatchadeja Tarni. So we're going to continue with our study of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 25, which is entitled the Atma Rama verse, 61 explanations of the Atma Rama verse. And this chapter relates a conversation that was had between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami in Benares. So this is a very exciting chapter, I'm sure, a very philosophical, exciting chapter. And the next chapter relates how Lord Chaitanya defeated the Mayavadis or impersonalists in Benares. So that's also a very exciting chapter. And after chapter 25, we go on to the Anshalila. So we're going through the Chaitanya Charitamrita pretty quickly. And when we finish, we'll figure out what other book we're going to read. Okay, so let's go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Shri, Omagala Tividanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay. Now, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we're on the 96th text of the 24th chapter of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila. Okay, let's go. Echari Sukatihaya Mahabhagyavan Tat Kamari Chari Hayashuddha Bhaktiman. Because they have a pious background, all four types of people are to be considered greatly fortunate. Such people gradually give up material desires and become pure devotees. What's being referred to here is the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that states Chatur Vidha Bhajantimam. Four types of people come to Krishna consciousness. I'm just going to reiterate, since you've already heard it, I'm going to reiterate very quickly. Those who are looking for wealth. Oh my God. Now, that happens sometimes. People come to Krishna because they want wealth. They do Satchinarayan Katha. They pray to Krishna for material things. This is very, very common in the Western world as it is in India. It's called the prosperity gospel in the Western world. Prosperity gospel means if you worship the Lord, you will be prosperous. Of course, there's a lot of people who worship God who are not prosperous. Anyway, so four types of people come to Krishna. One type, they want some material, let's say, thing, like money, money, money. Another type is because they're in distress. Oh God, just like it's stated, that during wartime, there are no atheists in the foxholes. Or, to explain what a foxhole is the trenches which soldiers dig and go into to protect themselves from the bullets that are flying overhead. So there's no atheists in the trenches of war, because the bullets are flying overhead and everybody's going, God, 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 God. So people in distress, they approach God. Then people who are inquisitive. Inquisitive means they're just curious. What's it all about? Tell me about Krishna. And finally, those who actually are looking for knowledge. I want to understand God. I want to not only understand, that's theoretical, that would be more curiosity, but I want to experience God. Not understand in the sense of simply intellectuality, but to experience, a full experience, or as we used in the 1960s, this nice word, grok, to grok God. And if you don't know what that word is, look it up in the dictionary. Okay, so those are the four types of people who approach, and when they approach, no matter what their motive is, as long as they don't commit offenses. Yep. As long as they don't commit offenses, then ultimately they will get purified of that desire, or those desires. And the typical example being used in this regard is Dhruva Maharaj, and also the four Kumaras. Sadhu Sangha Kripa Kimva Krishnara Kripaya Kamari Dushangachari Shudabhakti Poya. One is elevated to the platform of devotional life by the mercy of a Vaishnava. Let me turn off the beeping on my phone. The bona fide spiritual master. And by the special mercy of Krishna, on that platform, one gives up all material desires and the association of unwanted people. Thus one is elevated to the platform of pure devotional service. So it happens, we all come to Krishna for some mixed motive or impure motive. Yep, you better believe it. Because if we didn't have an impure motive, or a mixed motive, or whatever you may call it, we'd already be Krishna conscious. So obviously, you, I, everybody who is not a Nityasiddha devotee has come because of some ulterior motive. That's actually very interesting. I was reading today, oh my God, maybe I should admit it. I was reading about this psychologist Maslow, and he was describing religious experiences or ecstatic experiences. It's a very interesting discussion that many people come to spiritual life because they want this, what's called a peak experience. But the problem with searching just after that peak experience is that one becomes ultimately very, very much self-centered, because you're looking for the ecstasy, the peak experiences. Like people, they have in the university, of course you all like to party, not you all, because you're not all university students, but there are some listening to this class, the party, and then party, they like to have that peak experience where they scream. I was talking to one student, and this student, who should remain nameless to protect the guilty, that they like these experiences where they have the party and they scream. So sometimes in Krishna consciousness we give people spiritual parties so they can scream also. So, and that's nice. I mean, however, uh, this is actually interesting. Maslow talks about this, uh, how one should come to religion or spirituality, on the other hand, for what it's a plateau experience where one is stable, steady, and just like not looking for one's own enjoyment. Really, really, that's really interesting. And he gives the example of a mother with a baby, and she's just looking at the baby, so happy. Someone just sent me a funny message. I'm not going to repeat. She's looking at the baby, and she's so happy with the baby. It's like a stable plateau experience. Actually, it's really interesting. I heartily suggest, well, I'm not suggesting everybody read these psychologists, but I'm trying to understand people's psychology, in caring for the devotees and religious experiences and helping devotees advance spiritually. So it's really important for me to understand, the psychology of religion. Because it's interesting that even though we are involved, or at least I'm involved, in a spiritual movement, material laws still apply. For example, you may be involved, or I may be involved in a spiritual movement, but if you don't put petrol or gasoline in your car, guess what? It's not going to run. I could chant Hare Krishna to my car. Of course, if I don't put petrol in my car, it will still run. It's an electric car. But let's say an ordinary car like the rest of you people have. If you don't put petrol or gasoline in the car, it's not going to run. You can chant Hare Krishna all you want to it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna, please, please have my car run. Please fix the engine. I tried that. Actually, it was interesting. Many years ago, I tried that. I had some physical challenge. I'm not going to mention what it was. It was a hernia. It was a hernia. So I just thought, I just pray to Krishna to get rid of the hernia. It's just why? Krishna's supposed to take care of his devotees. Krishna says, I preserve what you have, and I carry what you lack. And anyaschintayantamam yejanat padipastate tesham lijavayutamam yogakshemavahamyam, for those who are dedicated. I said, Krishna, I'm dedicated to you. Why should I have to go to some mundane, material doctor to get taken care of? So, therefore, what happened? It didn't work. Prayers were answered. I was trying to make Krishna my servant and becoming a surgeon. So ultimately I went to the hospital, had it taken care of, and it's not a problem anymore. So it's important for a devotee is called daksha. That's one of the qualities of a pure devotee, is daksha. Daksha means expert. So even if one is not expert in every subject matter, at least you go to the experts, even in the material world. You go to the experts to figure out how to do things. It's not that you go to a devotee to figure out how to fix a car, unless he happens to be an expert, or how to fix your hernia, or psychology. So therefore, for me, it's important to understand different aspects of the material creation. In fact, even in the Ishopanishad, it says vidya avidya. One has to become expert or study some avidya or material knowledge in order to serve Krishna in this world. And also the statement is the very same thing that is utilized to, let's say, a thorn that gives you problems. You have to use a thorn to pull out a thorn. Okay. So Actually, I'm just trying to justify my studies. But in any case, it's really interesting how people are looking for that peak experience and using religion, or they may use drugs, or they may use alcohol, or they may use sex sometimes for that peak experience, and then you're not satisfied because you have to keep increasing that peak experience. And so, people increase the drugs, increase the, whatever, illicit life, increase whatever, just like, finally you end up with masochism or sadism or something like that, or self-flagellation or something like that to really give you the high that you're looking for. So when you're looking for a high, it's self-destructive, whether it's religion or whether it's in material things. So one should seek a plateau. So how does one seek the plateau in devotional service? Not a low plateau, a high plateau. One seeks the plateau, my understanding is by being very thankful what Krishna has given him and just having love and dedication. That love and the dedication is actually the plateau. Not the, certainly we do have symptoms of ecstasy from time to time. Like that's described in the Vedic literatures, symptoms of ecstasy, such as, Vyabhichari Bhava, or Sanchari Bhava, like rolling on the ground, crying, jumping up and down and dancing. That's fine. Those things will be there. But that should not be our focus. Like Srila Prabhupada's focus was not ecstasy. His focus was the pure plateau elevation of love of his spiritual master. And that's really what satisfies the self. Savai pumsam parodharma yato bhakti and hoksajay. Ahaitukiya pratita yatma suprasidate. What will satisfy the self is that love, that bhakti in the heart. So we should understand that. So, even though people come, so getting back to the point of this particular verse, even though people come for these perhaps sometimes peak experiences, it's actually the love that they're searching for. And that really keeps them stable and steady and really gets them out of the search for these peak experiences. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I wanted to share that with everybody. Somehow or other came out tonight. So let's go on with the, excuse me for taking a break from the Chaitanya Charitamrita to explain some realizations. Satsangam mukta dusango atum not sahate buddha kirtyamanam yasho yasya sakrita karanya rochanam. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in the association of pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. Whoops, I am going to have to take a little control here. Disabled. One of you has started to write on the screen, so I just disabled your ability to do that. Sometimes people get a little too intelligent and they think they can write on my screen. So I control the horizontal and the vertical. So what does it say? The intelligence have understood this. So in other words, it's spontaneous. Like Lord Kapiladev says, like the Ganges or a river flows to the ocean. That's the consciousness of those who are Krishna conscious. Automatically you like to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10-11. All the members of the Kuru dynasty offered respects when Krishna was leaving Hastinapur after the battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna was going to his own kingdom, and all the members of the Kuru dynasty were overwhelmed by his departure. This verse is spoken in that connection by Sutta Goswami. A pure devotee becomes attached to Krishna by hearing the Lord's glories. The Lord's glories and the Lord himself are identical. One has to be qualified to understand this absolute truth. Therefore, one should be given a chance to associate with a pure devotee. Our Krishna consciousness movement is meant for this purpose. We want to create pure devotees so that other people will benefit by their association. In this way, the number of pure devotees increases. Professional preachers cannot create pure devotees. There are many professional preachers of Srimad Bhagavatam who read this work to earn their livelihood. However, they cannot convert materialistic people to devotional service. Only a pure devotee can convert others to pure devotional service. It is therefore important for all the preachers in our Krishna conscious movement to first become pure devotees and follow the regulated principles, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. They should regularly chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on their beads, follow the devotional process, rise early in the morning, attend Mangalarti, and recite Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita regularly. In this way, one can become purified and free from all material contamination. That's an interesting statement here. It is therefore important for all the preachers in our Krishna conscious movement to first become pure devotees and follow regular. Well, Prabhupada defined pure devotees in a little bit different ways, like functional way. He said one who doesn't fall down, one who's always thinking of how to spread the movement. That's one way that Prabhupada described it. Another way is that you follow a pure devotee and you can act, not that you act at all intents and purposes like a pure devotee, but you can actually transmit the potency of a pure devotee if you follow and serve a pure devotee. You become empowered. That's called Shakti. Kali Kalera Nama Krishna Nama Sankirtan Krishna Shakti Vinanahi Tari Pravartana. The one has to get this Krishna Shakti. Shakti means potency. Boom! You get imbued with the potency. You can also lose the potency too if you deviate in any way. So here's an interesting verse. Sarvapati Vinir Muktam Tatvatvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchite. That's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Majalila 19:170. It's also from Rupa Goswami. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all one's senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of God and the Master of the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. Oh my God, side effects. These are good side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. You understand? You become free, and then you become purified, and your senses become spiritualized. To make a show of devotional service will not help one. One must be a pure devotee following the devotional process, then one can convert others to devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu practiced devotional service and preached Apaniya Chari Bhakti Karila Chara. In other words, that someone who is a preacher must be a good example. That's what Prabhupada said. If a preacher behaves properly in devotional service, he will be able to convert others. Otherwise, his preaching will have no effect. Or as Prabhupada said, example is more important than precept. Precept means what you say. Example is what you do. Very heavy verse. Dusanga kahiye kaitavad atma vachana vanchana Krishna Krishna bhakti binu anya kamana. Cheating oneself and cheating others is called kaitava. Associating with those who cheat in this way is called dusanga, means bad association. Actually, that's what Prabhupada said. Those who desire things other than Krishna's service are also called dusanga, bad association. Actually, dusangis, bad association. Now, text 100, a famous verse from the Bhagavatam. And it'd be nice if devotees learn this verse. Dharma prajita kaitavotra paramamli matsanam satam vejam vastavim vastu shivadam tapa Trayom Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Para Vishwara Sajo Ridya Parujate Tra Kutibir Shushu Shubish Takshanat. Famous verse. The great scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, compiled by Mahamuni Vyasadeva from 4 original verses. We described the 4 original verses yesterday, called the nutshell verse in the 2nd canto, describes the most elevated and kind-hearted devotees and completely rejects the cheating ways of materially motivated religiosity. It propounds the highest principle of eternal religion, which can factually mitigate, that means get rid of, the threefold miseries of a living being and award the highest benediction of full prosperity and knowledge. Those willing to hear the message of service, the message of the scripture, in a submissive attitude of service, can at once capture the Supreme Lord in their hearts. Therefore, there is no need for any scripture other than Srimad Bhagavatam. Wow. And of course, this is a quotation from Bhagavatam 112, very beginning of the Bhagavatam. For an explanation, see Adi Lila 191. Prashabde mokshavancha kaitava padana eshloke shridhara shrami kariyachena vyakyana. The word pra and the word projita, that's in reference to the Bhagavatam verse we just read, specifically refers to those desiring liberation or oneness with the Supreme. Such a desire should be understood to be the foremost cheating propensity. The great commentator, Sridhar Swami, has explained this verse in that way. In other words, if you want to become God, to become one with God, in a ontological sense, that is the greatest cheating propensity. Sakama bhakti Ajnani Diyalu Bhagavan Pracharana Diyakare Ichara Pidhana. When merciful Lord Krishna understands that a foolish devotee desires material prosperity, he gratefully gives him shelter of his lotus feet. In this way, the Lord covers the devotee's undesirable ambitions. That's true. Somehow or sometimes Krishna gives you what you want, and it doesn't satisfy you, or it becomes like a headache. And sometimes Krishna takes away what you want, and then you see the real satisfaction comes from Krishna's lotus feet and the chanting of Krishna's holy names and the association of devotees. And Krishna does whatever is best, whether he takes away, whether he gives, like Prabhupada's father would often tell Prabhupada that Krishna has 10 arms. I mean, this is speaking in a metaphorical sense. Krishna has 10 arms, and with those 10 arms, if he wants to give you something, you cannot keep yourself from getting it. And if he wants to take away something, he's the best pickpocket, and he can take away everything. Sajam dishatjar itam artiton hridam naivartado yapunar artitayata swayam vidate vajatam anicyatam ichapidanam ijapada pallavam. Whenever Krishna is requested to fulfill one's desire, he undoubtedly does so, but he does not award anything which, after being enjoyed, will cause one to petition him again and again to fulfill further desires. In other words, sometimes Krishna gives you so much, you say, all right, that's it. I know it's not going to make me happy. The only thing that's going to make me happy is your lotus feet. When one has other desires but engaged in the Lord's service, Krishna forcibly gives one shelter at his lotus feet, where one will forget all other desires. It's frightening. But you forget him. It's not that Krishna just like tortures the hell out of you. You just have a higher taste, you know. You have so many desires in this world. Oh my God. And then Krishna just like helps us. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 5:19-27. Sadhu Sangha Krishna Kripa Bhakti Rasvabhava Etine Savachadaya Kare Krishna Bhava. Association with a devotee, the mercy of Krishna, and the nature of devotional service help one to give up all undesirable association and gradually attain elevation to the platform of love of Godhead. So, association with devotees, the mercy of Krishna, which is the association of devotees, also prasadam, also Krishna's mercy manifests in many different ways, and the nature of devotional service help one just eventually become so detached from everything else that it's just like, man, I'm not interested. Nirapeksha means disinterest. This verse refers to the association of pure devotees, the mercy of Krishna, and the rendering devotional service. All these help one give up the association of non-devotees and the material opulence awarded by the external energy, Maya. A pure devotee is never attracted by material opulence, for he understands that wasting time to acquire material opulence is a misuse of the gift of human life. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Shama evahi kevalam. What is the nature of devotional service? The nature of devotional service, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. The 9 processes of devotional service. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it says, Shama evahi kevalam, 1, 2, 8 in Srimad Bhagavatam, the eyes of a devotee. Politicians, social workers, philanthropists, philosophers, and humanitarians are simply wasting their time, for human society is not freed from the cycle of birth and death by their activity and propaganda. These so-called philanthropists, politicians, and philosophers have no knowledge because they do not know that there is life after death. Understanding that there is life after death is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. A person can understand himself and what he is simply by understanding the first lessons of the Bhagavad Gita. Important verse 2:13. Dehinosmin yata dehe kovaram yavanam jarate ha tathantara praptiyavidastatva namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Not knowing the real science of life, a foolish person engages in the temporary activities of his life and thus becomes further entangled in the cycle of birth and death. He always desires material opulence, which can be attained by karma, jnana, and yoga. You know, we're always thinking that when we get this material thing, it's going to make us happy. You know, people are thinking, you know, I want a bigger house with a big yard in it, and I want this and this and that, and actually it's just more things to take care of. Like I gave that example of the yogi who was meditating and he was living such a long life that his lifespan was as long as a day of Brahma multiplied by the hairs on his body, and he didn't even take any trouble or take the trouble to build himself a house. He probably combed his hair, and he said life was short. It is short. It is so short. You don't know what's going to happen. You know, something can happen. Just like there's one lady who I was trying to help in New Orleans, and she had a bicycle accident, and now she can't do her yoga anymore for a while. You're just like, all of a sudden, things are taken away. You're riding on your bicycle, or you're riding on your scooter here, and everything gets taken away. But when one is actually elevated to the devotional platform, he gives up all these desires. This is called Anyavilasha Shunya. Then one becomes a pure devotee. Shunya means void of all sorts of dirty things. Because, anyway, it's not an unnatural process. It's like growing up. So we don't want to take toys away from a child. For example, if a child has toys, you know, blocks and a little playhouse and everything like that, you don't just like grab it from them and say, grow up, buddy. You don't do that, because it's just going to make them frustrated and become more immature. So with devotees, we don't do that. We point out, you know, what anarthas they have. Yeah, we point it out, but we don't heavy them out. We just say, oh, nice anartha. No, we don't say nice anartha. We say, you're doing very well. And then someone progresses. That's the higher taste. You know, we have to understand that devotees in the beginning have anarthas. Prabhupada said it's like being in a hospital. You got to expect the people in the hospital are sick, but they're getting better. So it's an hour to keep them in the hospital. You don't heavy them out because they're sick. Can you imagine if someone is sick, let's say someone has COVID in the hospital, you start yelling at them for having COVID? No. You give them the treatment so they can get better. So I don't yell at people for being in Maya. Just tell them they're in Maya. So, and sometimes we use a little humor to tell them too. Humor is actually a very wonderful tool to help people, even laugh at themselves or laugh at their own Maya. Age yata yata hata yakyana kariba Krishna gunashva dira etu janiba. As I progressively explain all the words in the Abhirama verse, it should be understood that all these words are meant to enable one to taste the transcendental qualities of Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya speaking. Shloka vyapya lagihe kariluna vasa evikari shlokera mularta prakasha. I have given all these explanations just to give some indication of the verse's meaning. Now let me explain the real meaning of the verse. Yana marge upasaka duita prakara kevala brahmopasaka mokshakangsi arha. There are two kinds of worshippers of the path of philosophical speculation. One is called Brahma Upasaka, a worshipper of the impersonal Brahman, and the other is called Moksha Kankshi, one who desires liberation. So I think that's pretty easy to understand. One who worships the impersonal Brahman, my dear impersonal Brahman, I want to enter into it. And the other one is, I just want to get out. I just want liberation. Moksha means liberation. Just want to get out of this world. And sometimes people take up Krishna consciousness for the desire for liberation. I mean, it's because they're in so much distress. Get me out of here, Krishna. Kevala brahmoka shaka tina veda hoya sadaka brahma maya ara prapda brahma loya. There are three types of people who worship the impersonal Brahman. The first is the beginner, the second is one whose thoughts are absorbed in Brahman, and the third is one who's actually merged in the impersonal Brahman. All by it. Bhakti bina kevala jnane mukti nahi haya bhakti sadhana kariye prapta brahmalaya. One cannot attain liberation simply through philosophical speculation devoid of devotional service. However, if one renders devotional service, he's automatically on the Brahman platform. And now we're not talking about the impersonal Brahman platform, we're talking about the spiritual platform. Because the word Brahman can indicate the impersonal Brahman, it can indicate spiritual, it can also indicate the highest, because we said Brahma means the highest. Bhakti Svabhava Brahma Kaite Karya Karshana Divya Deha Deha Karaya Krishnera Vajana. Characteristically, one in devotional service is attracted away from the impersonal Brahman. He's offered a transcendental body to engage in Lord Krishna's service. Actually, it's stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Prabhupada Saraswati, Kaivalya Narakayate, that this merging in the Brahman or the impersonal Brahman realization is hell. It is hell. You just simply become miserable. Why do you become miserable? Because you lose what gives you the most happiness. What gives you the most happiness? This is another thing I was reading today in psychology. Sorry about that. We are social beings. When our basic needs are met, basic needs like food, water, air, things like that are met. Comfort, I'm wearing a sweater, it's a little chilly. So when our basic needs are met, then really what's very important to us is this relationship. Yes, relationships. One can say so many things, I don't need relationships. I'm an iconoclast. I don't need relationships. No, you need relationships. And so spiritually, if you come to this Brahman platform, and which is devoid of any sort of variety and relationships, that is a platform of misery. Yes, you do realize your eternal nature. it is a platform where you get relieved from the material miseries. Certainly there's no death, disease, old age on the Brahman platform, but there's no satisfaction, tushti, tushanti cha ramanti cha, machita makatha prana, bodhyantas cha parasparam, katyantas jamam nijam, tushanti cha ramanti cha. There's no satisfaction because you really need interaction with other entities and ultimately interaction with the supreme entity, Krishna. Now, even the Buddhists realized that after a while because they started to worship Buddha, had a relationship with Buddha, isn't it? So that Buddhism became a sort of religion, a worship of Buddha after a while. Of course, there are different types of Buddhism, like Zen Buddhism and other things like that. But, so they have all these giant, if you've ever been to Thailand or any country that's very much Buddhist, you'll see they have all these big statues of Buddha and they worship them. There's one statue of Buddha that's lying down in Thailand. I've been there. It's as big as a football field. Wow. And there was another one made of 24-karat gold. And I wanted to take him with me, but he was just too big. So, anyway, so there's no happiness. That's why it says Kaivalya Navakayate. That this merging in Brahman or realizing your impersonal Brahman is not a kayate. It means it's hell. Text 11. Vakta deha pailahaya. And actually, all right, let me just finish this because actually I wanted to talk about this. And sometimes people will teach devotional service, but with the aim of merging, they'll just say that devotional service or worshiping Krishna. There's some famous people even who were, not now, who were in Vrindavan, and they were teaching, Krishna consciousness in different ways. Of course, not really the same way that Prabhupada taught Krishna consciousness. Their way was practically no regulated principles, drugs help you, go ahead, go for it. But anyway, they were teaching about the chanting of Krishna's name and everything like that. And ultimately they said, but we're doing all this so we can become one with Krishna, lose our identity. But there's no happiness in losing your identity. The happiness is a relationship. Just like people are doing so many things for relationships in this world, whether it's a man-woman relationship or a friendship relationship. Krishna's rasas are based on relationship. That's called sambandha. Based on relationship. Either you're in Shantaras, you're passively adoring the Lord or offering prayers to the Lord. But there's still some attitude of service, but it's not as advanced. There's no mamata there. Then and dasha, and then there's more relationship. And sakya gets more deep. And vatsalya, the parental relationship, very, very deep. And in Madhurya, the conjugal relationship is very deep. So the most satisfying thing is a deep, deep personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees of the Supreme Lord. So we should really understand that when we're dealing with people who are professing an personal understanding or even devotional personal understanding in the guise of devotional service, that they're proposing something that is ultimately miserable. Ultimately going to make you miserable. That's right. You may like them, but ultimately you may like the persons who are talking about it. That's right, we like everybody. But ultimately it's going to make you miserable. Nobody likes to be miserable. I'd like to satisfy my loving propensity and have Krishna there and like everybody. It's so cool. Okay, on that happy note, we went up to text 110. We didn't go too far today. Let me just mark this down. So I have it right here. So we went to 96 to 110 today. Okay, and so we will stop sharing and take some questions. Hold on a second. I will allow you now officially allowed to unmute yourselves. So, who has a question? You can either ask a question in the chat window, ask a question by unmuting yourself, or raising your little hand. Gopal Das, you have a
Yes,
question?
my best.
Okay, so what's that?
So you were talking about peak experiences, and
Yeah.
sometimes we see that aspiring Vaishnavas, before they complete their sadhana bhakti, so to speak, or advance beyond Vaidhi bhakti, they're very anxious to engage in gopi kata and talk about conjugal loving affairs and madhurya ras.
Yes, because
Um,
that's the search for the peak experience, right? You got it.
mm, mm, that was my question.
Yeah, uh, well, of course, that's also another term used in psychology is what sublimation.
Mm,
So basically, their peak experience is a sublimation of their material desires. And if any of you don't understand what sublimation is, let me explain it. Let me explain it in terms of balloons. How about that? That's nice. So here, let's say I don't have a balloon here, unfortunately. But let's say we have one devotee who makes different animals and different characters out of balloons. I'm sure you've all seen that when you've been kids. And she entertains kids like this, entertains adults too. So you have a balloon and you don't fill it completely with air. Because when you really want to shape it in a particular way, you push the air out of one section of the balloon and then it pops out in the other section. So that's like a psychological term of sublimation. That, let's say you're really lusty by nature. You're lust. You're lusty by nature. And you don't want to admit it because it would really hurt your false ego because you want to think of yourself as an advanced devotee, right? That's your conscious. I'm an advanced devotee, been in the movement so many years. And so you keep it down, you push it down. Not going to be lusty. So it may come out as anger, or it may come out as uh, vicariously. There's another big word for you. Look it up in the dictionary. I can't be your dictionary for you. So you may come out as vicariously enjoying. Well, I'll explain what vicarious is. Just let's say if you watch a romantic movie, so many ladies, they go to watch these romantic Bollywood movies, and they cry because they're actually putting themselves in that position of the lady who has met her long lost beloved. That's called vicarious enjoyment. So through vicarious enjoyment, one can fulfill one's sublimated desires. Now, that's not that hard to understand. And so one type of vicarious activity is dealing with intimate subject matters, like Krishna and the gopis, which appear to be like pastimes between boys and girls in this world, or between you and your girlfriend, or you and your boyfriend, or whatever. And you sort of, it tintillates you. There's another word. I'm not going to describe that because I think everybody knows. It tintillates and stimulates even your material desires. That's why Prabhupada said, if one prematurely takes to an understanding, instead of getting purified, they will get putrefied. Yes, I thought that was a really interesting explanation. I'm really into psychology, so sorry about this.
But my question was a little bit more along the lines of the peak experience, because even before we really have any sort of understanding of Krishna consciousness, we read in Prabhupada's books that Madhurya Ras is the highest. So of course the highest is the only thing that's good enough for us, because of course, we're the greatest and we deserve the highest.
Yes,
so right. So so when someone is really after this, absorbing oneself in Madhurya Ras because they're hearing that it's the highest, and then someone says, well, like you've said on so many occasions, maybe I'm a cow, maybe I'm a blade of grass, maybe I'm a cowboy, whatever.
Yeah.
And some people will think, oh, that's not good enough for me. So how to avoid uh such modes of thinking?
Service. Just try to identify yourself as a servant to the spiritual master. See, that's the first step. When one identifies themselves as a servant to the spiritual master, then it'll be revealed, and the highest is what you're meant for. Just like you play tennis, right? No?
Yes, correct.
Now you don't play. Who's that famous lady who played tennis? I forget her name.
Billie Jean King.
No, no, there's a lady of color.
Oh, Serena Williams.
Yes, Serena Williams. Now you don't. It's not your natural constitutional position to defeat her in a game, right?
Not even a little.
So you play on your own level, and that's your perfection. You you play with some high school kid, and that's your perfection. That's a joke.
I wish I could play with some of the high school kids these days.
Yeah, that's what Irmela said is true. Yes, it's true. Perfect means the highest is what you're meant for. This is exactly what I was saying, but she expressed it very nicely. The highest is whatever you're meant for, that's the highest. So your highest is that. And so I'm trying to think of something I do that I'm not so good at. Anyway, a lot of things I'm not so good at. If I was to play tennis, the highest I would get in tennis would be playing with a 2-year-old. They probably beat me. Oh, I said it. Yeah, the highest is what you're meant for. Anyway, you repeat my words. Is that the way in which many perfected devotees relish the conjugal rasa and ultimate spiritual vicarious enjoyment? Not if they're actually advanced devotees. Wait a second, I got to answer all these questions. Here's one from Jagat. We're accustomed to think of seeing Krishna as a peak experience. How can we learn to see Krishna in ordinary plateau experiences? Develop a sense. Actually, my plateau experience is that, of course, it would be nice to see Krishna. I'm not going to say, Krishna, you're too much of a peak experience for me. I think you need to disappear. But my plateau experience is just like relishing my service to Prabhupada and relishing my position as a servant to Prabhupada. And to me, that brings great satisfaction and bliss. And sitting down and chanting japa, ordinary things, just appreciating the ordinary things. Like today, I woke up more early, which is practically every day. And right now I'm staying by myself, so I have put on these slideshow of the deities, and I was just like feeling so grateful, like praying for Krishna and Radharani's mercy for all my japa. It was just like such an intense, wonderful experience. So, and then, that's plateau. I wasn't just like expecting Krishna to pop out of the TV screen. that, that would have been nice. But, I'm just stabilized. Personally, I'm just stabilized in my relationship with Prabhupada, and then Krishna reveals. He reveals to me whatever he wants to reveal. I'm not just pushing it. Like Prabhupada said, deserve then desire. So you don't push it. You don't push Krishna to reveal himself. Krishna, when you want to reveal yourself, you reveal yourself. But to me, I was just so happy, so grateful to be serving Prabhupada in this way. It gives me so much happiness. Okay, one more question from Abhay Chaitanya in Australia, the far-off country of Australia.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Good to see you.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Jai.
So my blessings. So what's up?
Oh, Gurudev, very similar, I guess, on the same line of what Gopal Das Prabhu was asking. Just when, how we've got the psychophysical nature to understand what particular, varna that we might be interested in. Similarly, do we have a particular type of relationship with Krishna? Like, what's our natural relationship? With all the different rasas, how do we know which one is it that we need to connect with?
It'll be revealed. It'll be revealed by your service to Krishna and Guru, by your service to the mission, and you'll develop a certain attachment, and then you verify that attachment with Guru or with advanced devotees, and then you'll cultivate that attachment internally, and it'll be a private affair between you and the advanced devotee or devotees. So, but it's there. It's just a question of, you're already established in that, but you haven't realized it yet. You've forgotten it. Like Prabhupada describes, like amnesia. And by the chanting and by the service, then it becomes revealed. It's revelation. You can't storm the kingdom of God. Okay, we have to end.
Thank you, Gurudev.
We have a program. We'll see everybody soon in Australia. Okay.